Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first and we hope last virtual Bonsai-A-Thon here at the Huntington. This is usually a two-day event that's at the Huntington. It has lots of vendors, exhibits, and demonstrations, but because of COVID, of course, we're here virtually today, but we welcome you and we're glad you're here. And today we have videos for you that Ted Matson will be narrating. And I want to thank our videographer, Tom Lau, for doing a great job and putting them together. And so we're looking forward to showing them to you. The Huntington has had bonsai since 1968. And in 1992, the Golden State Bonsai Federation joined the Huntington and we brought a collection here. It's one of 3 in California. And since then, we've been working with the Huntington to care for the trees. And so there's basically 2 bonsai collections at the Huntington. There's over 400 trees, and of those trees, about 50 are GSBF trees, but we treat them all as one large collection, and all the trees are cared for in the same way. And taken care of by the staff here at the Huntington, our curator, bonsai curator, Ted Matson, and some of the other people on the staff, and also by many volunteers. And I assume probably some of you are out there, and I want to thank you very much because people have been coming to the Huntington even since last May, all this year during COVID. We're wearing our masks and social distancing, but taking care of the trees. And for that reason, the trees look great now. So we're very happy about that. So this has all been going on under the direction of Ted Matson, who is, as I said, the bonsai curator. He's been curator at the Huntington since 2010, when Ben Oki, who was the first curator, retired. Ted's been doing bonsai for over 40 years. He's a longtime teacher here in Los Angeles, and he's also a past president of GSBF. So now I'm going to turn this over to Ted, and he's going to guide you through the bonsai at the Huntington. Ted?
All right. Thank you, Ellen. Well, welcome everybody to definitely an unusual event. And like Ellen says, hopefully it'll be one of a kind and we'll get back to a more normal life and schedule. As Ellen mentioned, we've managed to continue having volunteer programs be able to come in and work on our trees. So yeah, things are looking pretty good. So what I'd like to do today is, again, thanks to Tom Lau. He came out late last year, and we spent a good portion of a day just taking a tour through the courts, the nursery, and also through an exhibition that was going on at the time, Lifelines Timelines. So what we've done is we've broken these videos, the tour, into a couple of segments. So we'll go do the courts first, then we'll do the nursery, and then we'll do the exhibition. And what we'll do is after each, we'll stop and pause, and I'll take Q&A if anybody has some. So with that, Ben, how about if we just kick in that first video? So what you're going to see is as if you visited the Huntington last December and just happened to be walking through the courts on a beautiful early winter day. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Huntington Library, Art Museum, and Botanical Gardens. And yes, we are open. The gardens are open to the public. And so I've invited you today to join me on a virtual tour and give a little taste of what you'll see when you come. My name is Ted Matson. I'm the curator of the bonsai collections here. And again, I want to welcome you to the 2021 Bonsai-A-Thon Virtual Bonsai Tour. Let's start with this. This is a beautiful ball of cypress that was donated to our collections by Dr. Tom Chen. You can see beautiful base, wonderful fluting with those heavy veins along the trunk. This tree always tells a great story of how bonsai is made. You can see exactly where the trunk cuts were made. You can see every extension of the top trunk that was built up. The branching, we're now working on building a lot of fine twig structure in there. And this tree also gives us wonderful fall color. We just haven't gotten quite warm enough or cool enough for that color to show up yet. But in another 2-3 weeks, this should just be a beautiful, intense coppery orange. Pretty powerful tree. Let's continue around this way. I just want to point out some of the highlights that we have, as you'll see. I'd like to point out this tree. This is a pretty famous Southern California bonsai. This is a California juniper that was styled and donated by Mr. Mas Moriguchi, as you can see. This is actually one of the more well-known California junipers. It has been named, and we have it out here just in honor of Mas, but also to highlight our old California junipers in our collection. Always a showstopper. You'll see we have a pretty good variety of trees. We still have some of our tropicals out. We haven't got quite cold enough for those to disappear yet. I'd like to point out this Eleagnus. This is just coming into its flower, and so this is always a fun thing to have flowering and fruiting trees on display. And very beautiful cascade. Again, nice twigging, nice branching, but the flowers just coming into play here really make for a wonderful effect that the public really loves. See some of the effects of our colder weather. We have here a pomegranate donated by the late Bob Kenoshita. Again, very powerful tree, beautiful twigging, very good mass on this. This always is, again, a very popular tree. And as we just went through the color change and the leaf drop, it's been pretty entertaining for our guests. I'd like to point out this oak. This oak was donated by Al Nelson. This is a tree Al dug in the mid-'80s, and he estimated at that time that this tree was over 250 years old. So we're looking at something that's maybe getting close to 300. In my eye, this is one of the best depictions of a coastal live oak as a bonsai you'll see anywhere. The tree was cattle browsed, which gave it its very natural branching and massive trunk, and it's just a spectacular tree. We repotted it this year. Al came in, and I was surprised how aggressively we were able to go at the roots. But the tree, even after that, we defoliated it, and it came back, and again, just a stunning piece of our collection. Very proud of this tree. So from here, what we'll do is we'll go into our middle court. It's kind of a transition court leading up to our upper court. You can see we have our COVID signage and directional restrictions going on right now. But let me point out a couple of trees here. I'd like to point out this massive old olive donated by Bruce Hisiyasu. Long time, very active bonsaists here in California. This tree, it's an example of an old gnarly tree where the main trunk has died and secondary trunks have taken over and now form the bulk of the bonsai here. Very large, it's a seedling olive with the smaller leaves, and that gnarly rugged trunk, you can tell that's been in the pot for many years because all the smooth qualities of the bark have long disappeared out of this tree. Again, a crowd favorite. It's so old and gnarly looking. I'd like to come and point out another really spectacular tree we have. This is a Chinese elm collected by Shigmiya and donated here. This tree looks good from both sides. we can actually turn this tree around and it looks just as good from the back as the front. So it's nice because we can keep it on display a little longer and just rotate it in place. But the beautiful pattern trunk, all the old scars are so beautifully rolled, and again, the age of this tree is just very well expressed. Pretty nice. So if you want to take a little panorama around this little mid-court area, you'll see we've got some olives, elms. We've got a tropical ficus again over there. We haven't gotten quite cold enough to put those away. Lantana, another olive. We got a single nice big femina here on display, and then in the shadow over there in bloom is a rosemary. Again, anything that has flowers or fruit the public loves, so we always like to have something with that on display. Let's move to the upper court. So now we've moved up the middle court and we're in the Harau viewing stone court here. Harau not only was Mr. California Juniper, he was an avid stone collector, opened up lots of areas of California, including the Eel River, where many of these stones came from. It's interesting because it's not too often that a museum encourages people to actually touch the art. But yeah, people are encouraged to rub and touch and get their oils on this. Obviously, in times of COVID, not much of that is being done. But again, it's kind of unusual that people are encouraged to actually touch the art on display. So let's go into the Zilgit court. What's really remarkable about this upper display court is even though it looks ancient, the wood looks so weathered and it looks like it's been here forever, it's relatively young. It's about less than 15 years old, but it looked like this the minute it went up. Really, I think some of our backdrops are some of the best for bonsai. Some of the woodwork is spectacular. Again, we've got some beautiful pieces up here to kind of highlight. And let's go ahead and kind of walk this way a little bit. I'd like to point out this cork oak, another tree donated to us by Tom Chen. Spectacular corking, spectacular movement, beautiful taper, no big chops. Again, to me, one of the finer examples of a cork oak bonsai that you'll see. Continue to refine twigging and branching for all of our trees. Adding a little more density in the twigging is definitely our goal. And with this tree too, we've tried to bring a little more asymmetry into the design, adding our lengths to extend a little bit on the right. Let's continue around this loop. We have a California Juniper here. I pointed out, if you notice, it isn't as styled and detailed out as some of our Californias. We kind of keep some of our trees in a more natural form, and so this tree has actually got that heavier crown and fuller top that you might see just in a tree in nature, but without it all layered out that we have some of our trees. So we like to show some variety. We consider this a teaching collection with educational focus. So to show some work in progress, to show some of the process of bonsai, it's also how we educate the public on how our art is done. So come on up this way a little further. And I'd like to point out the olive two trunk in the corner. It's actually three trunks.
That's a pretty famous Frank Goya olive. That tree has appeared in many magazines. It's been on the cover of Bonsai in California. And that's one of the interesting things with some of the trees in our collection is we actually have publications that show them at much earlier stages. So we really can track the development of some of our most spectacular pieces. And again, there's been a lot of photographic evidence of that tree. And so we have a beautiful history of it. Part of what makes this interesting is the flowing nature of the trunk. Sometimes olive can have very stiff, straight lines, and this, it's all curve and movement. And for an olive, that's pretty unusual. So that makes this a pretty spectacular tree. Here we have a Hollywood juniper. You can see it's wired out, and in this case, it's wired with aluminum, not necessarily copper. So again, we're not afraid to show some of our process to the public and let them have some idea of how bonsai are actually made and some of the different ways we make it. Again, beautiful old trunk here, wonderful fluting and movement as would be characteristic of a Hollywood juniper. Nice big cork tree. I'm guessing this had to be in someone's landscape at one time, given the size of it. Bark is beautiful on it, but again, it's a massive tree that's had a lot of age in the pot because of that bark texture. So again, tropical still out. You can see the yellow color. It's just starting to show a little reaction to the cold. So this will be swapped out in the next couple weeks. As you come up here, I'd like to point out an interesting little oddity as a bonsai. We actually have records that show that this tree at one time didn't have this elm in here. That was added on later. Unfortunately, when that second tree was picked, it was obviously either in full winter silhouette or it was in green summer growth, because you can tell that it's a slightly subtle different variety of elm and the way it turns color. In the spring and the fall, it's very obvious, but then at other times of the year, it blends in. So it's probably not something we'll ever change, but it's just a little oddity of this bonsai. And definitely it spurs questions by the public when they see that different color tree in there. But it's an old piece by the Komais, and again, it's an important bonsai for us. Up here, I'd like to point out another one of what I consider are truly spectacular pieces. This pomegranate, this was actually originally styled and designed by Jim Barrett. He grew it for many years. And again, I think this is one of the most spectacular twisted pomegranates in bonsai you'll see. The rootage, the nibari is stunning. The branching, the fluting, the muscling, the twisting, it's all in this tree, just expressed so beautifully. So yeah, this is, we were very fortunate to acquire this tree. It was part of an estate sale a couple years back, and luckily it didn't go for the asking price, and I think that's one of the reasons we were able to acquire it. A very spectacular tree. Again, you can see the nice color change. We're getting some nice yellows off of our pomegranates this year. Another California juniper. Nice twists on this. There's some real good multiple twists along that trunk. And so again, that ends up really telling a wonderful story in that wood on. And so again, ends up being a crowd favorite a lot. Again, the massive base, the twists, pretty popular tree. As we work our way around, we have this Cedar Elm, and this tree gives us just spectacular fall color every year. It always gives us these real nice rich yellows, and one of the nice things too is it holds its leaves pretty good, so the color stays for a while. So we love having this tree up here in the fall going into winter, because the change is always very pleasant. Beautiful barking on the tree. Notice how the bark is in such beautiful proportion to the trunk. You know, there's nothing that kind of makes you question the proportions of what you're seeing in this. Again, very popular tree through the transition. This tree in early spring is also gorgeous. The emerging leaves are just this beautiful light green, and so again, it's a multi-season delight. Here we have our Shohin display. I'm not going to step in and set off the alarm, but again, this whole structure was conceived and created by our craftsman Andrew Mitchell. The inserts actually slide out, can be flipped around, and so we can change the configuration. The circular stand in the center, he also fabricated from just iron bar that he hand wrought and welded and came up with the design. And so again, we're able to always have some Shohin display for the public as well. This also, you can see a little bit of the backlight coming through its translucent panels, and when in the afternoon when the sun comes from behind and casts a light on the panels, it really highlights the little trees in a beautiful way. So wonderful structure to really show off our little guys. Ray Blassingame is the person who takes care of our Shohin here. So here we have a nice Natal Plum. Again, we love showing the fruit. Again, that's some of the novelty that the public always really relates to. So yeah, while we still have a little bit of time showing this fruit, this tree will be out here. Some of our oak leaves. But we have a few pieces by Melba Tucker, some of her cycads, especially some of her olives, cycad, and so this is really quite a spectacular little rock planting. Quite the stone. Another pomegranate with really good fall color. This is a Golden State Bonsai Federation tree, as you can see by the signage. This was donated by Kathy Boomsma, who is a long-time Southern California bonsaiist, and just got to the point where her trees were a little too big to care for, and so we ended up getting some spectacular old pieces of hers. So this old hollow trunk, again, it's quite a crowd favorite. This tree next to it as well, going through its fall color. This is an oak that was designed and then donated ultimately by Gloria Stewart. For those of you who may not recognize the name, Gloria Stewart was a famous actress. She was the original female lead in the original Invisible Man from the 30s. She retired from film to raise a family, but she did bonsai, and she was a loyal bonsai hobbyist all the way until she passed. And she ultimately ended up playing Old Rose in Titanic. And even when she got her fame back, she still came to bonsai club meetings and events. And again, we're lucky to have a couple of her pieces in our collection, including this nice old oak forest. So that's our upper court here. And when you come, there's probably around 70 trees that you'll see on display. But that's only a portion of our collection. We've got a number of trees, over 500 pieces actually, and most of them are back in our bonsai nursery. So probably the next thing would be to head back there and show you a little bit what goes on behind the scenes.
So that was our first segment. And I do see we have some questions and stuff. So if
Yeah.
I can read them, so I can probably go through a couple of these.
Yeah, or I did pick out a few that
Okay.
that might be good for you to answer. A couple of questions about the big oak from people who say that one of them was, I don't understand how a 250-year-old tree ends up as a bonsai. So maybe you could talk about how trees end up as bonsais.
Well, we're very fortunate in that we have some wonderful wild specimens to be able to collect, not just urban landscape, but again, truly wild things like our junipers and oaks for sure. So what happens is in the process of bonsai, we've learned the horticultural techniques of collecting trees with enough of a root system to allow that tree to survive, reestablish itself, and then start regrowing. So for an oak, the ideal time is to collect in the spring around February when the buds are swelling. And again, digging a certain amount of root mass, putting it in the right medium, a good coarse medium that doesn't drown the tree, will allow new roots to form. And again, once that happens, then the tree will rebud and start growing. That applies to all trees. It's kind of interesting when we're working in the courts, when the public comes through and asks about a collected tree, a lot of times they don't realize that we collect the whole tree, top and root as a system. We don't just take a piece and root it as a cutting, or there's a lot of misconception. But yeah, the idea is we collect a root mass that will support the life in that trunk until new roots can grow, until new foliage will take over.
We have another question from a beginner. Which types of trees would you recommend for a beginner?
Good question. I think as beginners, one of the things, you want a tree that's going to keep you engaged a little bit. So for example, I wouldn't recommend a pine. You only work on a pine, touch a pine a couple times a year. So you're just going to be sitting and staring at that tree a lot. Better to start with an elm or an olive. They're easily trainable. They're very forgiving, but they also, especially during the growing season, they're active enough that they keep a beginner engaged. It's not untypical for a bonsai hobbyist getting into it. Get their first tree, they like what they're doing so much, they want to keep doing it, so they get the second tree, the third tree, and all of a sudden you've got 25 trees. So again, for a beginner, to prevent overwhelming yourself, get a tree that will keep you a little more active. So again, olives and elms, I think, are ideal, and they love our climate.
How often do you swap out trees on display, and what criteria do you use to make your decision?
Okay. The shohin are swapped every couple of weeks. Ray's pretty regular with that. So those turn over. The other trees vary. We really try to take advantage of seasonal features, again, like fruit, flowering, seasonal changes, fall going into winter, spring emerging buds. Right now, compared to what you saw in the video, we have ume on display. They're beautiful in bloom right now. And so spontaneously, as they came in, we swapped out trees to take advantage of that. Right now, we don't have any tropicals on display. It's a little too cool. We've got them in a hoop house, but then as weather warms up, we'll start putting those out. There is no set plan for the bigger trees. Again, we try and take advantage of seasonal features or other opportunities. An example will be coming up. Since the video was shot, we also have acquired some bonsai collections, and there's some spectacular trees that we've repotted, and once they start growing, they're going to go out fairly soon. The idea would be that, you know, if you come like every month or two, that you'd see some different things, that you wouldn't just see the same trees. And finally, having said that, there are some trees that just lend themselves to their spot on the court. They get good light exposure. And there are definitely some that tend to have a longer term spot.
And we did have a question about the tropicals. You mentioned that they're in the hoop house now. Can you talk a little bit about when they go into that and how we protect them from the cold?
Yep. While Southern California really tropicals can tolerate our temperatures for the most part. Here at the Huntington, where the bonsai nursery is, it's actually one of the coldest spots on the property. It's right by an escarpment, so the cold air comes down off the mountains and it hits the bonsai nursery and then it rushes down. So we have had, you know, some damaging frost there. Our trees usually go up to December, and even in some cases up to Christmas, but we always get like early mid-December, we always get a real sudden cold snap. So we try and have everything at least prepped, so as that comes, we can take our more sensitive ones. Among our tropicals, we do have some buttonwoods, for example, that the minute it gets into the 50s, they start showing, you know, some stress. And yet we have willow leaf ficus that are pretty tough and can get much colder. So, you know, there's even a range of tolerance among our tropicals. The true tropicals, we have to be a little more careful of though. We do have a milk house heater. It's an electric heater that operates on a little thermostat. So even on the coldest nights, we can generate just enough warmth to keep things from damage.
And then we have the opposite question. How do you protect the bonsai from heat during the summer?
Well, that is a challenge. And boy, some of the extreme heat events we've had in the past few years have caused damage. Surprisingly, when we've had a couple of our extreme blasts, it's been our natives that have reacted. So California junipers, it's surprising how much they have suffered during some of the extremes. They recover, but I kind of think what happens is we get into the periods where our nights stay very warm. And normally for desert plants, even as hot as it gets during the day, at night it cools off. And when we don't get that cooling, I think that's where they suffer. So the typical reaction in our native Californias is they will just lose a great portion of their interior foliage. We've also had some shimpaku and stuff that have burned on the outsides. We do use shade cloth, but you know, there's some areas in our courts that are very hot. And so we have to just be aware. And if heat's coming up, I try and take trees that are more sensitive out and put them in more protected areas and adjust things physically where they sit. So again, we can avoid some of the problems. But yes, it's getting worse, it seems like.
I have two more questions before the next video. One was, you mentioned that Al Nelson's tree was cattle browsed. What does that mean?
Cattle browse means that it was a tree growing in a pasture. As the cattle ranged, they would chew the twigs, and so this tree was kind of constantly pruned, but without any kind of stylistic direction. So it developed this very gnarly natural form that again is very reflective of the way oaks evolve in nature. So thanks to a herd of cattle, you know, operating over about a century, that tree developed a natural bonsai without human intervention. Luckily, Al had the eye and saw it and said, "Oh yeah, this is worth collecting."
And then one more question before the next video. What is the oldest bonsai in the collection?
We estimate, and you'll see it when we get a little later into our Lifelines Timelines exhibition. We have a native California juniper that we estimate to be between 1,500 and 1,800 years old. So when we get to that, I'll point that out again.
All right, thanks. Do you want to go ahead? I'll let you, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll kick into our next video. And so what this is we've gone through the courts. So now we'll take a little walk through the nursery. And again, you won't get to see everything, but you'll get to see some highlights. And I'm going to point out a couple of our projects that we've got going and show you some of the work we do. So if you want to get that one, we'll get going. All right, welcome to the Ben Oki Nursery here behind the scenes at the Huntington. This is where we do our work. This is where a lot of the real action in bonsai occurs. And you'll see as we go through the nursery, a lot of things in progress here. So again, come on in. Right off the bat here, we've got a couple of big shimpakus. The lighting may not show it so well, but we had some heat earlier. And this tree really took a hit. You can kind of see some of the brown remnants left here. So we've kind of gone and cleaned a lot of the brown out of here, and it's probably going to be next year before this tree is really showable again. But yeah, we had that 117 week again, and we had a few trees take a bite. Luckily, it didn't totally suffer. It will come back good. This is another one that same thing. It took a little bit of a heat. You can start seeing all this nice spiky growth up here. It's obviously recovering, but again, it's going to take a little bit before this starts looking really spectacular again. If you want to look down this aisle, we've got a guava here. It actually has a few fruit up in here on it. But that tall Hollywood juniper down on the end there, I'll point that one out. That's a tree that was Dan Robinson's original chain carving demonstration in Southern California. It was about 40 some years ago, and we had him back in 2013 for a convention where he did the second round of styling on that. So it's got some good history here with Dan. Come down here again, you'll see, if you look that way, we've got two pines. You'll see one, we've done the clean out on it. The other one, we're not quite there yet. One of the things, we have to wait for a little cool weather to get to our pine work because we get a lot of needle drop. So as things harden off and we're able to get to them, we take them in stride. On this side, this is a old liquid amber forest. We just acquired that from Maribel Ballandonk. It's been here for just about 3 weeks now. Just went through its pretty foliage turn, but we just cleaned it up the other day. So you can see it's a little leggy, a little wild. We'll get all that under control, but nice old forest here. Here's a tree I'd like to point out. This is actually a pretty unique tree in that it's a Japanese import. When I first came to work here, turns out we had a sister garden relationship with the Ritsurin Garden in Takamatsu. And so I half-heartedly said, well, how about we do a bonsai exchange? Well, in looking into it, we could do that. The Huntington is actually an import location, and we had a license, so we worked it out. And so they sent us this very old old Japanese shimpaku juniper, and we sent them a camellia. Now, one interesting thing, this came, it was in quarantine for 2 years. A little over a year ago, we brought it out. And last year, we had a convention here in Southern California, and it turns that Mr. Rushibata from Japan was a guest headliner. And so we invited him to work on this tree. And so he did the initial styling of it. What was interesting is Mr. Rushibata had won the most recent Prime Minister's Award at the professional show in Japan, Kokufuten. And the governor of the prefecture where this tree came from was visiting Southern California shortly after the convention, and he came to the Huntington and he specifically asked to see this tree. And so he and his entourage came here, and it created quite a sensation when I was able to tell him that this tree was then styled by the Prime Minister's Award winner from the last year.
So that was kind of a proud moment for us. We've got it sitting in this crate because it's the angle is going to change, and so this spring we'll properly get it at its new angle in a proper pot. So we'll be well on the way to realizing his design. But kind of a unique piece that we actually were able to get a bonsai exchange with Japan. More pieces as we go along. This tree, again, the angle is a little bit difficult. This is also, I think, one of our more spectacular bonsai. This is an Elm Clump from Jim Barrett. This was a tree that was started by cutting back in 1958. Jim was working on one of his other elms, and as he was taking clippings, he put them in little liners and propagated them. Well, in 1960, he had this flat of all these little elm cuttings, and so he started potting them up. Well, by the end of the day, the story goes, he's starting to get a little bored, so he started just grabbing them by the fist load. And so this is one of his fist plantings, propagated in 1958, planted in 1960. So this, as a bonsai, is a very old piece because it's been under continuous care since 1960. And almost all clip and grow styling, Jim said, through this. So this also, it's on the courts a lot. We just took it off because it was there all year long, but it's again a real crowd favorite. Here's another Jim Barrett piece. We're going through a quadrant repotting with this. This came to us in soil that was kind of like concrete. And so what we've done is each year, starting in March of 2018, 2019, 2020, and so this next March we'll do the final quadrant. And we've been slowly, getting the twigging reveal, cleaning it up. So this is also going to be a spectacular tree. And part of it is because the bark. There's about 60 years worth of bark intact on this, and the layers and the delicate sheets are really quite nice. This tree was originally from the Yamaguchi Nursery up in Sanger. Jim got a lot of his early stock from there and has developed it in cans in his yard. So again, this is one of those old pieces from that nursery. Go back here a little bit. On this side, again, this may be a little tough to see, but we have a pretty famous bonsai here. This is the Hatanaka Hollywood Juniper forest. Again, old planting. This appeared in many Bonsai in California magazines. And the thing with Hollywoods is their foliage gets so leggy and so long that every once in a while you really have to knock them back hard in order to get them compact again. So a year and a half ago, this was cut hard, and it's coming back. It's recently been wired out, and we're getting our shape back into it. So hopefully this next year, this one will get back on display, because again, it's a very popular bonsai. Back here, we've just got some development grounds, some growing areas. We've got some of Mr. Che's large penjing back here from his own personal collection. And we're doing projects. We've got some layerings going on here. We've got some layerings go back there. And we've just got some of our bigger trees. This is a pretty famous tree. This is the front here. This is the John Naca olive. This is a tree that he collected as a stump from an abandoned orchard in Fontana in 1958. So again, this is an old bonsai that's been worked on for a long time. This guy is due for a new potting this year. It needs to have its soil refreshed. But look at the texture of the bark on that. That roughness of the bark on an olive really only comes when you've had one of these in a pot for a long time. As a collected tree, as a nursery stock, very often there's smooth green bark, but this black, pebbly kind of bark only comes with stresses of being in a pot for a long time. And the bark texture on this is spectacular. We have a little pinyon pine right in front of it. Again, you're kind of looking at the back. That was given to us by Gary Castanola, and he comes and helps us work on it. But pretty rare to see pinyon pine as bonsai. And again, this is a pretty nice specimen, pretty old. Hasn't been shown yet, but it's kind of probably this next year we'll be able to put it on display. Got a couple other, again, another big California. This also was donated by Al Nelson, and it was another convention demonstration for us last year. That's also why it's planted in this box. It was planted at an odd angle, and so this winter, sometime in January, we'll repot this, get it at its proper angle. You can see how well it's doing, just spiking everywhere. So a lot of our stuff is pretty happy for sure. You can see another big bald cypress here. You can see it's going through a color change. It's not quite as pretty. That experienced a little bit of a burn during the heat. So there's actually probably, you know, more brown in here than this really pretty coppery color. You'd like to see this whole tree have that kind of a reddish tone to it. But this is probably not going to be quite as nice this year. The fluting, the veins on this tree, again, stunning. Just some old wood in there. It's got a nice prostrata raft, big old raft. This we acquired as a gift from Linda Vicina. It was one of her late husband Paul's pieces, and so rafts, you know, that's a real classic bonsai style. And again, this is really a nice old one. So this also is due for potting. We'll pot this in the spring, but this we should be able to get out on display this next year. At the end of the bench right here, we have quite a spectacular Bunjin, California juniper. This was originally Sherwin Amamoto. He was very active in GSBF. He was a former GSBF president, very active in California bonsai. But he ended up getting a couple of these Bunjin. One of the others went to the collection up in Fresno at Shinzen Garden. But we got this one, and they're really quite stunning Bunjins in terms of that very abstract trunk shape. The way the deadwood frames the whole tree, and the way the foliage mass fills that negative space, it's a wonderful design on this. Let's walk up this aisle a little bit. I'll point out this tree. This is another tree that was spectacularly engineered. This is a tree that was originally donated by Bob Kinoshita. Well, up until a couple of years ago, this wonderful twisty folded trunk in here, as it came up to about here, all of a sudden it just went up straight, and all the branches just went out straight. So it almost looked like a very amateur tree from that point. Well, once again, Tom Vaughn created this method for cold steaming. So what we did is we applied his process to the trunk from this point going all the way up. And with that process, we were able to crank this from being vertical 11.5 inches all the way down here. And then we were able to put this movement, that movement, every bit of that movement was then subsequently put in as this tree was designed. So we've got it heavily reinforced, but yeah, this tree too. Now the top of this tree has the drama and the placement to match the drama and the placement of that lower trunk. That transformation made this from an interesting tree to a truly spectacular bonsai. This will be one, it's really never been shown. I'm so anxious that this next year hopefully get it on display, because the lower part of the trunk, I think, again, is as nice as you'll see anywhere. Let's point out this guy too, because this is a little bit of an unusual tree. This is a scrub oak. Traditionally, scrub oaks are kind of seen as a very short-lived bonsai. Well, this is a bonsai that's been around for 60 plus years. We actually have a picture of the owner of this tree, Ted Iwaki, with his son Steve, when it was on display at a bonsai show where Steve was just a young boy and the tree was much smaller. We also have a picture after it came here with Steve and his over 100-year-old dad, where again, now Steve was much taller than his dad and the tree had grown up. But to have a scrub oak survive in a pot for this long, very unusual. So this also is due for a repotting this year. You can see a little bit of brown leaf up in there, but the buds are just fat and plump. And so again, with a refreshment of the soil, this tree will really take off and be revived this year. But again, very unusual to have something this old of this species around this long. Why don't we go over to the other side and point out a few things there. All right, this is the second part of our bonsai nursery. And you'll kind of see that maybe there's a few things in process here. You'll also see this is where we keep our shohin. And we also have a few benches for Mr. Che's penjing collection here too. So there's a little bit of a mixed bag of things. If you come and look this way, I'll point out a group of trees right here. There are opportunities in collections to make improvements in the art. So this group of trees was actually originally two separate forest plantings, but the plantings were just big trunks together. There was really not much design. It was one of those situations where the soil had kind of caused some problems, so we took the plantings apart, and we've been working on them for a couple years. This next year, I plan on putting this together as a seacoast forest scene. I think these dramatic swooping branches and you know, the proportion of all this, I think it could be quite a spectacular piece. And so I'm going to exercise some ego and save that project for myself here. If you come down this way, you will see one of our more famous bonsai as well. This is Goshin 3. So this is the third planting of John Naca's famous forest, Goshin, that's in the National Arboretum. It turns out that once that forest left California, folks here were a little bit disturbed that all our treasures were going. So what happened is, at two subsequent conventions, John created two more versions of this, one that resides in Northern California and this one that resides at the Huntington. This tree or forest also went through a transformation. Some poor soil caused some problems with some trunks. So we disassembled it. We grew individual trees in individual pots to strengthen root systems for a couple years. And then in 2019, Jack Sustick, the retired director of the National Arboretum, came and we made an event at a California Bonsai Society show of the reassembly of this. And it turns out that Jack was involved in the creation of all three Goshins. And so he was a perfect person to come and lead this. We've been working to refine the pads. We had some development because we had some replacement trees, but this is turning out to fill very nicely. And again, this year, we'll probably get this back out on the courts for display for the first time in many, many years. If you want to turn around, you'll see here's our shohin working trees. We've got trees in development. We got trees that we rotate and display. You'll see quite a collection of olives. These are trees I've used in some of my classes where I do a potting demonstration. So some of these are just accumulating from that. Right here, you see a group of trees that Ray has planned for a swap out probably on Tuesday. The gardens are closed on Tuesdays, so those are our days to really get in there and do some essential work. And for our Shohin, if you remember the display area, these will be swapped out next Tuesday. Here's a tree I'd like to point out. We do have some very nice cork oaks in our collection. And this we acquired last year as a gift from John Jackson down in San Diego area. And the thing I'd like to point out, this is the front of this tree. The thing I'd like to point out about this is, again, beautiful corking, but the subtle movement, the delicious taper in this tree with no trunk chop. That is truly remarkable when you see how beautiful this gentle taper with the movement and the flow is, and there's not a spot in that trunk where there was a big cut where you see a big rollover or a stub or anything. So the way this tree was developed, again, that trunk is so desirable. And so what we're doing is we're working on a little branch refinement, little crown refinement in that structure, but really everything is to highlight this really stunning trunk in this tree. Now, on this side, we've got a couple of benches. These are some of Mr. Che's penjing. These are trees, like this group of trees, for example. He developed all these pieces in his yard. This was put together also in 2019 as a demonstration featuring a couple of Mr. Che's colleagues who had come from China. And they donated the pot, Che donated the trees. And again, this was quite a spectacular demonstration. As it gets refined, it will end up going out on the penjing quartz. So you'll see we've got a couple things. Here's a pomegranate, pretty spectacular pomegranate. You notice that some of the penjing in here look a lot like bonsai. A lot of the trees you'll see in here actually started as bonsai. This one in particular, this was started by Ernie Kuo. And he was one of John Naca's primary students, an incredible bonsai artist. And you can see that this is a pretty classic Naca style bonsai in terms of its proportion and all that stuff. So even though it's part of our penjing collection, it definitely has more bonsai characteristics. And there's a couple of those that are like that. If you look right through here, you'll see an evergreen pear. Again, that was one of Ernie Kuo's trees, and faithful flower in the spring, beautiful trunk texture, nice big massive tree. But again, it's clearly a bonsai, not quite a penjing in this case. Spectacular tree though. So we'll come down here a little bit. Again, another set of Che's trees. So these last two benches, we've got some things here. The last bench, we have a reverse osmosis watering system that we're able to utilize for things like camellias, azaleas, and maples. So the reverse osmosis system is back there. So again, one of my goals is to rebuild the azalea collection here, because again, with good water, we should be able to do better with that. We've had some in the past, but yeah, that would be one of my goals. This bench, we've got a mix of things. You'll see a lot of junipers in here. We are keeping some of our junipers in what we call an old school approach. So in Southern California, we had a lot of our trees over the years that were just coming hard pruned pretty constantly and then pinched constantly. So what happened is many of our San Jose's and our Prostratas, what they did is they just kept on producing this juvenile growth. And so that was the way bonsai was done for quite a while. Now contemporary bonsai encourages trees like this to allow their foliage to extend out, to elongate, and hopefully convert to a softer texture, a more mature foliage. If you look at this tree here, this has done that conversion. So this tree, we're turning into a slightly more contemporary style with the way we're going to lay this out. But this guy, it tends to react when we come in the heat, and so it always has kind of a mix of juvenile and mature. So this is a tree we said, you know, there's nice old trunk, classic Southern California old style bonsai. Let's keep it as an old style bonsai with padding and stuff. Again, that's the way the public learns, you know, that there are different approaches to the art. But you'll see on this bench, we've got a couple of trees that, you know, we're maintaining in that old school look. And when you look at the trunks and the bark, you can see they're pretty old bonsai too. The textures are pretty stunning on those. See our fertilizer tea bags. You didn't see those in the display courts. I don't like to show that kind of stuff, but in the nursery here, we'll do our fertilizer. And we use tea bags just to keep our soils clean and unclogged. If you look across, you'll see a little azalea color at the time being. You'll see a little camellia over there in flower. Nothing spectacular enough to put on display. Some bougainvillea we're, you know, working to tighten up. So again, kind of more of a working portion of our collection here. And if you pan back this way, again, you'll see some more of Chay's trees. Again, some have classic penjing, like again, that elm there. That's one of Chay's development. But then if you look at this, again, has almost more bonsai qualities. Well, the reason it does is because, again, this was an Ernie Quo tree originally. And so once they start as a bonsai, it's difficult to convert them to classic penjing structure. So doesn't mean they're not nice trees though. Okay. Yeah. So we've got a few trees in here, again, that were recent gifts that we're trying to refine. So here's another cork oak, more compact, beautiful trunk, again, no trunk chop, but we're trying to fill our branching out here. So again, stuff in progress. You might not see some of these trees on display for a couple of years, but again, it's good to have elements that are in process so you have some future or two too. That's the thing that makes our art unique, is we also have to deal in that fourth dimension of time. We also always have to be looking ahead. We always have to be kind of planning. Where's our tree going? Where's it going to be in a couple of years? And in days of COVID and stuff, when there's so little to look forward to, this gives us something to look forward to. So hope everybody's doing okay. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you've enjoyed our tour. And here at the 2021 Bonsai-A-Thon virtual experience, be safe, take care, and we'll see you out there. And here we are. So, Lifelines Timelines. This is a special bonsai exhibition that is on display here at the Huntington through January 25th. This is an exhibition that was conceived as part of the Huntington Centennial Celebration, and originally was launched and went live last March 14th. Well, on March 16th, the country shut down, so nobody saw this exhibition. So we pulled it back in the nursery. We actually had to de-wire the trees. We had to then rewire them, restyle them, because this summer exhibition said, you know, your exhibition would work in times of COVID, so let's restage it. So as of October 15th, it went back live, and let me tell you a little bit about it. So what there is there are 5 locations where we have a California juniper on display. we specifically picked some trees that had spectacular deadwood, very sculptural deadwood qualities, but also that grew in that one directional vein that is characteristic of the species, because what that allows us to do is use our dead skeletal wood as a calendar, and we're able to put all the other collections in the Huntington in a chronological context. So what we have here is one of our junipers, and it's in a slant style. And you can see the dark lifeline, and you can see the white dead skeletal wood. And on the white skeletal wood, you'll see 3 arrows with some dates on them. Now, those dates correspond to items in the gallery behind here. So this tree is associated with the Maple Orientation Gallery, and this deals with Huntington history. So if you look down on the panel here, we've highlighted some things from the gallery, including in 1903, Henry Huntington buys the property. That becomes the Huntington. Well, when that happened, this particular juniper, this lifeline in 1903 would have been all the way back along this ridge here. And when the Japanese garden was created in 1912, that lifeline on this tree would have been a little further out, and by the time the third item from the gallery is highlighted, that tree would have been a little further out here. And since 1928, it's grown that much more. So again, what we're able to do is put our other items in context. Now, the reason we can do this is explained by this little panel. We actually took a piece of California juniper, cut it, polished it, and counted rings, and we were able to demonstrate that for every 100 years there's an inch worth of growth. So then by taking a pair of calipers, I was able to, from our lifeline edge, kind of go back and give that estimate. Is it the exact lifeline? No, probably not, but it's close enough. So this idea was kind of a take on the redwoods. So for anybody who's ever been to a redwood grove and seen the cross section of the giant trunk where they count the rings back, same concept here, but we're using our collections of bonsai to highlight the ages of all our other collections. It's the first exhibit that integrated all the collections of the Huntington into one contextual display. So this is first of 5. Here we're at our second setup, and this setup is right outside the main library. And again, the items that are being shown in context with the tree are some of the items that would be found in this gallery. Of course, with COVID, the galleries are closed, so unfortunately people can't go inside right now and find the items that are associated with this tree. But we're finding that they understand the concept of the show and recognize that that's part of the experience that they're missing. Anyway, this is another one of our stunning trees. This is a tree that was collected and styled and donated by Shig Mia. It's in a Sarah Rayner pot that we ordered specifically for this tree, and I think this is one of our oldest pieces in the collection. I estimate this blade of wood, by the time you get up here, to be close to 1,800 years old. And again, we're really going by 1 inch to 100 years, and it's just a little bit of a math issue. One of the interesting things about this tree is how heavily it was engineered. This branch used to be way out here. this branch here used to be way up here. So what happened is the branch structures and foliage really didn't associate with the trunk much at all. Well, we're lucky here in California. We got some very talented artists, and there's a gentleman, Tom Vong, who came up with a cold steaming technique, and we applied it to this tree, and we were able to put a deep bend in this to bring this in. We're able to bring this whole structure back over and put some additional curves in here. But now all of a sudden, all this movement and flow is all reflecting that movement and flow, and we have a very harmonious design just by bringing those branch structures in. So again, collections like ours don't survive on one person's guidance. It requires a team, and we're lucky to have somebody talented like Tom to come and show us how to do things like this. You can still see the wire bracing for some of the heavy move. Again, this is a teaching collection, so I don't mind revealing some of our secrets a little bit. You can see the items here, from Canterbury Tales to a Shakespeare portfolio to an Audubon illustration book. And you can see about 200 years earlier than that, 220 years earlier than that. And again, that's just almost a straight linear measurement we're going by there. On each of our panels too, we tell the story of how California junipers grow. Each panel tells a little bit more, so by the time you get to all 5 locations, you have a pretty good understanding of what makes these trees so unique and what enables them to manifest themselves with this dead skeletal wood like this. All right, let's go to the next one. You can probably see it in the background. So this is the third of our 5 installations, and again, spectacular tree. This display is associated with the science hall of the library, so it's more technological innovation and things like that are shown in the illustrations. But again, we've got a spectacular tree that has been growing in that unidirectional manner. What also makes this tree quite stunning is the fact that it's got a beautiful, powerful twist in it, and the fact that this also has a different type of juniper foliage grafted on. So this tree was actually collected in 2002. It was grafted with a Toyagawa juniper in 2006. So it's a relatively young bonsai, but an old tree. All this work was done by Tak Shimazu, an artist here in Southern California, including the grafting, which when you go look for that graft junction, it's just about impossible to see where it was done. So it was really done well. Some of the characteristics of this wood is it's not as solid. It's a little bit more deteriorated, probably from termites. It could quite possibly be that this tree was collected from slightly lower elevations, because we find that when we get to the higher elevations, the more the Tehachapi, there's fewer termites. When we get to lower elevations, or if this would have been collected, say, from the south portion of the Antelope Valley, a lot more termites. And so this characteristic of wood in here, it could be a lower elevation tree ultimately. I would like to point out some of the laciness of this dead wood in here. It just, it's so fragile, but yet there's so much character and age. One of the things that a good bonsai artist does is really frame important elements, and you can kind of see how this foliage just kind of puts this wonderful little arc around that and draws your eye right to that spectacular piece of dead wood. Very well designed, a lot of subtleties going on in this tree. All right, let's move on to number 4. So this is our fourth installation in Lifelines Timelines. And this tree is in front of the Huntington Art Gallery, which used to be the main residence. Because of COVID restrictions, we couldn't really put this so close to the entrance. So this was actually placed so if this gallery was open, this is the exit. So as people would come out the exit door, they would see this tree. Again, a stunning, massive tree, beautiful foliage, beautiful deadwood. The lifeline vein runs only along one side of this. There's no real twist, but the deadwood blade is spectacular. You can see again, look at all the termite evidence in there. Because of the texture of this, my guess is this deadwood was sandblasted to bring out the detail, because that's very difficult to achieve. But it's a very powerful tree. And again, we're showing some pretty old items here. You know, going all the way back to 1450, we're highlighting a painting of a Virgin Madonna. And again, Blue Boy is one of the spectacular pieces in the art collection here. And Blue Boy during the centennial also has been undergoing a renovation. And so we also highlighted Blue Boy. So Blue Boy would have been painted about when this lifeline would have been somewhere in through here. And it's nice to see that the public gets it. When they see the dates, when they see the arrows, and they see the items depicted, they draw that link of the two. And so we're finding that the exhibition is fairly self-explanatory in that way. Okay, let's go to our fifth and final location. So, this is our fifth display in the Lifelines Timeline exhibition. And this highlights elements in the Fielding Scott galleries, which is more contemporary American art. And so again, a beautiful blade, but compared to some of them, not as huge, because again, our dates are relatively young, and I didn't want the dates to get lost in an oversized blade. The delicacy of this, though, as kind of a bunjin, is really, again, a very stunning tree. And same principles. We are marking with our arrow points the dates at which those items on display were created. So again, you can see, 1928, a fairly recent piece of art. So, again, if we had a giant mass of wood, that would kind of just disappear. So again, it has some impact here. This tree, it's flowering. It gives a slightly different effect than some of our others. But on each of these trees, again, these were, over a year ago, were all wired. I even had Ryan Neal come and help with some of the styling of these pieces. So they were prepared for, in the fall for display last spring. And like I say, we had to take them off display when COVID hit. And by summertime, all the wiring we'd done last fall was cutting in. So we had to de-wire all the trees. We gave them a rest, and then my volunteers, since we couldn't bring artists back in to help, my volunteers in this case did the wiring, the restyling, and we captured the original designs, I think, pretty well. And again, got them out, so they're looking very good. Like I say, they'll be on display through January 25th.
All right. So for those of you who didn't get a chance, you did get a little taste of Lifelines Timelines. Just so you know now too, when we took that exhibit down, those 5 junipers are on display in the courts now. So, the spectacular trees are out for people to see.
All right, I think we are getting to the end of our time here. You did have a lot of sort of general questions from people of how do I take care of a bonsai? Where do I find information in literature? What kind of books can I get about bonsai? Where would I find bonsai or pre-bonsai material to work on here?
Okay.
So sort of general things like that.
Well, we're lucky because Southern California, it's a great place to do bonsai. There are a number of nurseries where you can go and purchase stock with partial training or at least some bonsai potential, appropriate species and that. A lot of our nurseries too carry tools, supplies, pots, everything you need. And so one way is search the GSBF website. It's gsbfbonsai.org. And if there's a bonsai shopper there, and so it'll list nurseries and stuff by area. And so that's one place certainly to get started. I also, in normal times, we offer a bonsai curriculum here at the Huntington. It's called Bonsai Gakko. It means bonsai school. And that typically, I bill it as an introduction to the understanding and appreciation of fine art bonsai. And typically done over 2 weekends in June and October of every year. We won't be doing a June class, I'm quite sure this year, but given how the vaccines are going and stuff, maybe we'd be offering that in next October. We'll play that by ear, but yeah, in the future, we will offer classes again. And if you take the class, that also, if you want to continue your education as a bonsai volunteer, that kind of opens that door too. And so a lot of people have taken advantage of that. In terms of books, there's all kinds of books. We still use John Naca's Bonsai Techniques 1 as a good fundamental one. Dave DeGroot has written an excellent book on bonsai techniques, but gosh, there's magazines and books, even specialty books on tropicals, on the small ones, on indoor bonsai. So you can kind of pursue your interest as you see, as you desire, I guess, in that sense. A lot of resources though, but GSBF is a great way to get started.
And then I'm not sure how much more time we have here. Do we know? I have some more questions. I have a number of questions about penjing and the difference between penjing and bonsai. And I don't know if we should leave those to Phillip to answer, maybe, probably.
I think that would be excellent because he'll have some good illustrations. I kind of discussed a little bit about that going through the nursery, pointing out some things that, you know, again, were started as bonsai and kind of still have bonsai characteristics. But yeah, I think Phillip in his discussion this afternoon will be able to clarify that better.
Okay, I did have one question that I don't know the answer to as to whether or not there are any trees left in native areas where trees have been, you know, dug up, or whether any of them are not left anymore. I'm not.
No,
I think
when you go into the collecting areas, I mean, what's impressive is there's hundreds of thousands of trees. There's only a small percentage that are suitable for potential bonsai. You know, the right trunk, the right proportion, where the root masses are. So when you're out collecting, you're walking by the vast majority. You might walk 4 hours to find the tree that then the next 3-4 hours you dig out. It's not like you're just going up and tearing them out. It's a much more selective process. So no, hard to imagine that we would ever run out.
Okay. And then just a couple more questions because we are a little bit over time. Why do bark and leaves miniaturize, but the fruits remain normal size?
Boy, probably would have to ask maybe a geneticist or a true botanist. I'm guessing that it has to do with the energy storage to support seed. You know, I think there's a certain amount of pulp and all that stuff around a seed that keeps it viable. So that's why we try and pick species that, like crab apples, that have small apples. princess persimmon versus the standard persimmon. So, you know, it's the size of your thumb as opposed to something this big. There are novelties, you know, I've seen full-size apples on a, you know, 6-inch tall tree, and it's kind of makes you chuckle, but it's kind of more of a novelty than anything else. I'm guessing, you know, again, it's programmed genetically that fruit requires a certain amount of stored energy in order for the seed to remain viable. I'm speculating, but again, I'm guessing that's pre-programmed into the tree.
Okay, so maybe two more questions. One was just about defoliation. When do we defoliate and why defoliate trees?
Defoliation, it's a great technique for reducing leaf size and stimulating a budding for massive twig building. You can really exponentially increase the number of bud breaks through defoliation. Timing defoliation and the ability of the tree to be defoliated varies. So for example, just this past week, here we're in the middle of winter, I went into our hoop houses and defoliated our buttonwoods. And the way I did it is I cut all the existing leaves 3/4 of the way off, leaving a little petiole and a flare. In some cases, we will defoliate completely. So for example, oak, you can defoliate when the buds are fully swelled and just about to open up. You can completely defoliate an oak and then repot it. When we did Al Nelson's tree, we repotted in March, and then in June we completely defoliated the tree, and it came back gangbusters. There are times the trees will naturally defoliate. We get into late summer, and maples, quinces, things like that, their leaves can be so burned that essentially they've defoliated themselves, and oftentimes will send a new crop. Many times we defoliate in that hot summer period, like ginkgos, for example, and maples. You can take all that burned leaf off, and then as we get into September, October, they'll push again, and you can get a brand new crop of leaves that oftentimes leads to better fall color. We don't defoliate any conifers, although we do a needle reduction in the winter on pines, but we never totally defoliate. We always leave needles at the tips near the buds to make sure they grow. And again, juniper, if you defoliated that, it would die. Broadleaf evergreens are odd because sometimes you can defoliate those, but you need to treat them evenly. If you defoliate partially, leave leaves in other areas, sometimes the defoliated areas don't pop back. That would be like olives, can be an example of that. So you want to be thorough and you know, treat the trees in balance. But you know, that's really a secret of bonsai right there. You learn the techniques for working on the tree in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, once you know how to defoliate, you kind of defoliate all trees similarly. But what happens is it's your knowledge of the individual tree species you want to work on for bonsai that you respond to. And so you learn about the tree, and you learn about when that tree needs to have that technique applied. And so there's no simple answer other than learn your trees. Once you learn those, bonsai becomes real rewarding and much easier.
And one last question, you may have already answered this. I was answering questions. The oldest tree in our collection?
Again, I kind of think that Shigmia blade, that was the #2 tree in the Lifelines timeline exhibition. That, you know, again, I think that blade is between 1500 and 1800 years. There's that other tree that was in front of the Huntington Art Gallery, or the exit to it. That tree too, the mass of wood in there is, I'm sure that's well over 1,000 years old, and probably getting close to 2 again. So those I think are our 2 oldest pieces.
All right, well, thank you so much. Any other words of wisdom as you depart?
Well, one of the things that I noticed in the video is the courts look so different than they did. Again, we've swapped out a lot of trees. There's things that are on in winter flower right now that are looking stunning. things that are just throwing their buds, things that are still in their winter silhouette form. So it's a great time to come and see the Huntington. The grounds are beautiful. With this last year, not as many crowds. Again, the landscapes in the gardens are stunning. So if you get a chance, come and see us.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ted. I totally appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And please come back this afternoon for the penjing discussion. Benjamin, I guess I'll let you take us out.